Let's delve into one of the darkest alternate paths in the Clone Wars. What if Maul did more than kill Duchess Satine Kryze in front of Obi-Wan Kenobi? What if that moment finally broke the Jedi Master, who had spent his entire life absorbing grief without surrendering to it, and Maul succeeded in turning Obi-Wan toward the dark side? This would not simply create an evil version of Kenobi. It would tear apart Anakin's emotional foundation, give Maul access to one of the Republic's greatest military minds, destabilize Mandalore, and force Darth Sidious to deal with a threat far more dangerous than the Shadow Collective he already considered intolerable. The divergence begins in the throne room of Sundari during the events of the Lawless. Everything leading to the moment remains the same. Maul and Savage Opress have built the Shadow Collective by joining forces with Death Watch, the Pike Syndicate, Black Sun, and the Hutt clan. They have helped Pre Vizsla seize Mandalore from Duchess Satine. Then Maul has killed Vizsla in single combat and claimed leadership through the very warrior code Death Watch claimed to honor. Bo-Katan has rejected him, refusing to accept an outsider as ruler, and Satine has been left as a prisoner while Maul uses Prime Minister Almec as the public face of his regime. Obi-Wan, acting without Republic authorization, comes to Mandalore because Satine asks for help. He fails to rescue her. Maul captures them both and brings them before the throne. The entire scene is designed for one purpose. Maul does not need Satine dead for military reasons. He does not kill her to strengthen his government or eliminate a battlefield commander. He kills her because she is a part of Obi-Wan's heart, and Maul wants Kenobi to experience the same helplessness he associates with the death of his own brotherhood, and the destruction of the life he believes Obi-Wan stole from him. Satine dies in Obi-Wan's arms after telling him that she has always loved him. In canon, this is one of the greatest demonstrations of Obi-Wan's discipline. He is devastated, but he refuses to become what Maul wants. The official history of Kenobi is defined by that refusal. He feels grief and does not let grief decide who he becomes. For this scenario to work while remaining believable to the character, that resistance cannot simply vanish in a second. Obi-Wan has survived Qui-Gon's death, years of war, the apparent death of Anakin on multiple occasions, the apparent death of Satine before this moment, and the endless loss that comes with commanding clones in a galactic conflict. A single angry scream would not suddenly transform him into a Sith. The change has to come from Maul recognizing that killing Satine was only the first blow, and from Obi-Wan being denied the chance to recover in the environment that normally keeps him grounded. So Maul does not order Kenobi taken away immediately after Satine dies. He keeps him in the throne room. Savage wants the Jedi killed, but Maul refuses. He has finally found something more satisfying than Obi-Wan's death. Kenobi is sitting on the floor with Satine's body in his arms, and for the first time Maul sees uncertainty where there has always been defiance. Maul begins speaking quietly rather than triumphantly. He tells Obi-Wan that the Jedi will call this another test. They will tell him to release his attachment, accept that death is part of the Force, and return to the battlefield as though the woman he loved was merely another lesson. Maul understands enough about the Jedi to weaponize their language, even if he despises it. Obi-Wan tells him to be silent. Maul continues. He reminds him that the Republic would not help Satine, because Mandalore was neutral, and because politics mattered more than the life of a friend. He points out that Obi-Wan came alone, precisely because the Jedi Council would not authorize the intervention. He tells him that the Order praises compassion until compassion becomes inconvenient. The words are deliberately distorted, but they are not completely invented, and that is why they hurt. Satine did ask for help. Obi-Wan did come without the Republic army. He did know that his official role limited what he could do. Maul turns every compromise of wartime Jedi service into evidence that Obi-Wan's discipline has only made him obedient to people who keep taking things away from him. Obi-Wan still does not join him. Instead, anger finally breaks through his control. He lunges at Maul with no lightsaber, not because he believes he can win, but because the need to strike something becomes stronger than judgment. Savage throws him back with the Force. Maul smiles, not because the attack harmed him, but because it proves Kenobi can be made to act from hatred. Obi-Wan immediately realizes what he has done, and tries to regain control, but now the shame becomes another weapon. Maul tells him the truth the Jedi will never say. The anger felt good because for 1 second it replaced helplessness with action. That is the first crack. The second comes in the prison cell. In canon, Bo-Katan and her Night Owls eventually free Obi-Wan and help him escape Mandalore. Here, Maul anticipates the possibility. He has already seen Bo-Katan reject his rule, and knows she may try to rescue the Jedi as a way of bringing Republic attention to Mandalore. Instead of placing Obi-Wan in ordinary confinement, he isolates him beneath the palace, takes away his comlink, and prevents any contact with the Jedi. Satine's body is removed. Obi-Wan is left with nothing but silence and the knowledge that he failed. For several hours he meditates. At first this works. He reaches for the teachings that have carried him through every earlier loss. He remembers Qui-Gon. He remembers Satine when they were young, when he and his master protected her during Mandalore's civil conflict, and Obi-Wan admitted later that he would have left the Jedi had she asked. He remembers choosing the Order, not because Satine meant nothing to him, but because duty meant something too. That memory should comfort him. Instead, Maul has poisoned it. Obi-Wan begins wondering whether all he accomplished by making that choice was postponing the same loss. He thinks about Anakin. The parallel is impossible to avoid. For years, Obi-Wan has watched his former Padawan struggle with attachment, fear, and the need to protect people he loves. Obi-Wan has warned him about possession and about letting fear determine his actions. Yet sitting alone beneath the palace, Obi-Wan realizes that he has never truly stopped loving Satine either. He simply became better at concealing it, even from himself. Maul's cruelty creates a poisonous question. If the feeling remained, then what exactly did all that suppression achieve? Satine is still dead. Obi-Wan is still in pain. The Jedi Code did not make him immune to grief. It merely ensured he had nowhere to openly place it. The conclusion is wrong, but grief rarely argues fairly. Obi-Wan does not immediately reject the light. He begins rejecting the certainty with which he has always defended the institution around it. That distinction is enough for Maul. When he visits the cell again, he does not ask Obi-Wan to become his apprentice. Kenobi would reject the word before Maul finished speaking. Instead, Maul asks him a question. How many more people will die because the Jedi keep serving a republic that has already become something else? Obi-Wan recognizes manipulation and says so. Maul does not deny it. He tells Kenobi that manipulation does not make the observation false. Darth Sidious has manipulated the entire galaxy. Count Dooku leads one side of the Clone Wars, while a hidden Sith Master benefits from the other. The Jedi have become generals in a war created by their enemies. Maul cannot give Obi-Wan every detail of Sidious's plan, because he does not possess every detail, but he knows enough to make the larger accusation credible. He was once Sidious's apprentice. He knows the Sith did not simply appear after Geonosis. He knows the war serves a purpose beyond separatist independence. This is the first thing Maul says that Obi-Wan cannot dismiss as emotional torture. The Jedi already know Dooku is Darth Tyrannus, even if the full circumstances of the clone army remain unresolved at this stage. They know a second Sith exists because the rule of two implies a master behind Dooku, and they have spent years failing to identify him. Maul's existence itself is evidence that Sidious's schemes extend back before Naboo. Obi-Wan demands a name. Maul refuses to provide one, whether because he wants leverage or because he does not yet have enough proof to make the public identity useful. Instead, he tells Obi-Wan that the Jedi are looking outward while the Sith are already inside the structure they defend. Now Maul changes the offer. He says Kenobi can go back to the Jedi if he wants. He can return to the Council, meditate, accept Satine's death, and continue fighting battles arranged by Sidious until the Sith decide the war is finished. Or he can stop obeying the board and begin hunting the person moving the pieces. Maul does not call this revenge. He calls it freedom. The choice is presented exactly the way Sidious often presents the dark side. Not as evil, but as permission to do what institutions supposedly forbid. Obi-Wan still refuses to trust him. He tells Maul that nothing he says changes what he did to Satine or Qui-Gon. Maul answers that trust is unnecessary, hatred will do. That is the line that finally exposes how twisted the proposed alliance really is. Maul is not asking Obi-Wan to forgive him. He wants Kenobi to hate him, hate Sidious, hate the war, and hate himself enough that all those emotions become fuel. To Maul, an alliance built on mutual hatred is more reliable than one built on affection, because hatred is the only relationship he truly understands. The third crack comes when Bo-Katan launches her rescue attempt. Her night owls breach the lower levels of the palace, fighting Maul's loyalist super commandos and reaching Obi-Wan's holding area. For a few minutes, events resemble canon. Bo tells Obi-Wan they need to move and that she can get him off Mandalore. He follows because staying in Maul's cell is not a choice. But the escape route passes through a service corridor where they encounter a squad of Mandalorians loyal to Maul. The firefight is close and violent. One of Bo-Katan's fighters falls. Another is wounded. Obi-Wan sees a dropped blaster and reaches for it with the Force. Normally he would use it to disable, cover, and escape. This time one of Maul's commandos says Satine deserved to die. The words are probably nothing more than battlefield cruelty. They are enough. Obi-Wan fires once, twice, then keeps firing after the immediate threat has passed. The commando collapses. Bo-Katan looks at him in shock because she knows exactly what Satine believed and exactly what Obi-Wan represented to her. Obi-Wan stares at the body and realizes that the shot that killed the man was not necessary. Bo tells him to keep moving. That kindness makes it worse. She does not condemn him, she assumes it was the chaos of battle. Obi-Wan knows better. He felt the intention. For a fraction of a second, he wanted someone associated with Maul to suffer, and he acted on it. The dark side did not arrive as lightning or yellow eyes. It arrived as relief. That is what frightens him most. At the extraction point, Bo-Katan prepares to send Obi-Wan toward a waiting ship, while she and her people hold off pursuit. He can leave. He can return to Coruscant, tell Yoda and the Council everything, and begin the difficult process of mourning Satine without allowing Maul to define him. In canon, that is essentially what happens. In this timeline, Obi-Wan looks at the ship and sees the Jedi Temple waiting at the other end of the journey. He imagines the Council asking for his report. He imagines being told to take time, then being sent back to the front because the Republic needs him. He imagines Maul continuing to rule the world Satine died, trying to protect. Most of all, he imagines Sidious remaining hidden, while everyone returns to their assigned place in the war. Obi-Wan does not board the ship. Bo-Katan thinks he is refusing, because he wants to help her retake Mandalore. She begins explaining that the Night Owls need outside support, but Obi-Wan tells her that Republic intervention will not come, not yet. Mandalore's neutrality gives the Senate an excuse, and Maul knows it. Bo asks what he intends to do. Obi-Wan looks back towards Sundari and says he is going to end the problem from inside. Bo immediately understands enough to object. She tells him that Maul murdered Satine specifically to destroy him, and that returning is exactly what Maul wants. Obi-Wan answers that perhaps knowing what Maul wants is finally useful. He leaves Bo-Katan before she can stop him. He does not walk back into the throne room and kneel. He moves through Sundari alone, using service routes he learned during the escape, and begins hunting Maul's lieutenants. He takes a lightsaber from a fallen Mandalorian who collected it as a trophy from one of the palace caches, then interrogates a captured super commando with a severity that would have horrified him a day earlier. He tells himself he is gathering information. The Force responds to his anger with alarming clarity. Fear makes the prisoner easier to read. Rage gives Obi-Wan energy despite exhaustion. Every successful step teaches the wrong lesson. Maul senses him coming. When Obi-Wan finally enters the throne room again, Savage moves to attack, but Maul stops him. Kenobi ignites the recovered blade. Maul asks whether he has returned to avenge Satine. Obi-Wan says he has returned because Maul claimed to know something about Sidious. If Maul lies, Obi-Wan will kill him. If he tells the truth, Obi-Wan will decide what happens next. Maul laughs because this is not surrender, but it is enough. The Jedi Master who once represented everything Maul hated has chosen to remain inside Maul's world rather than go home. He tells Obi-Wan they begin with a simple understanding. Neither of them serves Darth Sidious, neither of them serves the Jedi Council, and neither of them allows the Republic or Separatists to decide Mandalore's future. Obi-Wan does not agree to the final point because Satine's people still matter to him. Maul does not care. The argument itself means Kenobi is staying. Their partnership begins not as master and apprentice, but as two enemies who each believe they can use the other. That makes it more dangerous than a simple conversion. Obi-Wan still hates Maul for Qui-Gon and Satine. Maul still hates Obi-Wan for Naboo and everything that followed, yet both hate Sidious, Both understand the Jedi and Sith conflict from different sides, and both believe the other possesses knowledge they need. Maul has created the dark mirror of the bond he always wanted to corrupt, not affection between teacher and student, but mutual dependency built out of trauma. The first person in the wider galaxy to feel that something has gone wrong is not Anakin, it is Darth Sidious. In the original timeline, Sidious already senses Maul's growing power and travels personally to Mandalore because his former apprentice has become a rival. He does not tolerate the possibility of another Sith power center existing outside his control. A Shadow Collective controlling Mandalore is dangerous enough. A Shadow Collective now harboring a fallen member of the Jedi High Council is intolerable. The disturbance around Obi-Wan's fall is not something Sidious can necessarily identify in exact detail from Coruscant, but he feels a familiar presence suddenly bending in a direction it has resisted for decades. The fact that this happens in the same place where Maul has established himself tells Sidious everything he needs to know about the urgency. Maul expects intervention, though not how quickly it comes. His years as Sidious's apprentice taught him that his former master does not ignore threats merely because they are distant. He therefore makes a decision different from canon. He keeps Obi-Wan's presence secret from the Shadow Collective's rank and file. Almec knows the Jedi was captured, and Bo-Katan knows he escaped the cell, but almost nobody knows that Kenobi voluntarily returned. Maul tells Savage that Kenobi is a weapon they will reveal only when it matters. Obi-Wan, for his part, refuses any suggestion that he is a Sith. He still regards the Sith teachings as corrupt, and sees Maul's fixation on titles as another form of slavery. Yet he has begun using the dark side, while convincing himself that he is simply no longer denying emotions the Jedi taught him to suppress. That rationalization is crucial. Most people do not decide to become monsters by announcing the transformation to themselves. Obi-Wan tells himself he is using anger without being used by it. He tells himself that he can work beside Maul without becoming like Maul. The fact that he is already making those arguments should be the warning. Before Maul can test the alliance, Sidious arrives on Mandalore. The sequence begins similarly to canon. The Sith Master enters the royal palace almost alone, radiating confidence because he knows Maul and Savage cannot defeat him together. Maul feels his presence and understands instantly. Obi-Wan feels something different. He has sensed Sidious only indirectly through the shroud surrounding the war. But now, the hidden Sith Master is physically near. The darkness in the Force is so concentrated that Obi-Wan finally understands why Maul speaks about Sidious with hatred mixed with fear. Maul orders Obi-Wan to remain concealed. Kenobi objects. If this is truly the Sith Master they have been discussing, then confronting him is the entire reason Obi-Wan stayed. Maul tells him that surviving is more important than proving courage. He knows Sidious better than anyone present. If the Master sees Kenobi immediately, he will understand the entire situation and adapt. If Obi-Wan stays hidden, Maul can learn what Sidious knows while preserving one unknown piece on the board. The duel between Sidious, Maul, and Savage therefore begins almost exactly as it does in canon. Sidious mocks Maul's claim to be a Sith Lord, reminds him that the rule of two allows no rival partnership, and attacks with terrifying speed. Obi-Wan watches from a concealed upper passage through surveillance feeds and the Force. He has fought Dooku, Ventress, Grievous, and Maul. None of them moves like this. Sidious turns the duel into humiliation. He handles both brothers as though proving a point matters more than killing them quickly. When Sidious kills Savage, Maul's scream reaches Obi-Wan even before the sound carries through the palace. The irony is almost unbearable. Maul murdered Satine to make Obi-Wan understand loss. And now Obi-Wan watches Maul experience the death of the person closest to him. Part of Kenobi feels satisfaction. That feeling is another step downward. He could tell himself Savage was a murderer and warrior who chose his path. But the pleasure is not justice. It is vengeance mirrored back. Maul fights harder after Savage falls, and for a brief period his fury makes the duel more competitive. It is still not enough. Sidious disarms and tortures him with lightning, then reveals that he has no intention of killing him yet, because he has other uses for his former apprentice. Obi-Wan understands the significance immediately. Sidious does not merely want Maul gone. He wants control. Whatever the grand plan is, Even Maul's survival has a place inside it. Obi-Wan nearly intervenes. His hand closes around his lightsaber, while Sidious shocks Maul across the floor. The dark side tells him that if he attacks from concealment, perhaps surprise can accomplish what the brothers could not. His remaining Jedi instincts tell him something else. Charging one of the most powerful Sith Lords he has ever felt without a plan would accomplish nothing except exposing himself and dying. For once, restraint and darkness point in the same direction. Obi-Wan stays hidden, and Sidious leaves Mandalore with Maul as a prisoner. That decision transforms the balance of the Shadow Collective. Savage is dead. Maul is gone. In canon, Maul's empire begins to fracture under pressure after Sidious's intervention. Here, Obi-Wan is still inside the palace with access to Maul's lieutenants, an understanding of Mandalore's strategic situation, and knowledge that Sidious believes the principal threat has been removed. The criminal empire should collapse. Instead, Kenobi decides to keep it alive. He tells Almec that Maul has been forced off-world, but that the government will continue. The Prime Minister is terrified because he has no idea why the Jedi Master, who once defended Satine, is now giving orders inside the regime that killed her. Obi-Wan does not explain. He tells Almec that public stability is essential. There must be no announcement that Maul is missing. Mandalore's population should believe its government remains intact. Food shipments, city security, and civil administration must continue. Super Commandos are to avoid unnecessary violence because brutality will create recruits for Bo-Katan. This is the first glimpse of what Maul has actually acquired. Not merely another lightsaber, but a strategist who understands how governments fail. Then he does something that would shock the Jedi Council more than any lightsaber duel. He begins coordinating the syndicates. The Pikes want reassurance that their spice routes will remain protected. Black Sun wants to know whether the Alliance still has enough strength to deter retaliation. Hutt leaders see an opportunity to loosen Maul's grip. Obi-Wan handles them differently. He does not threaten everyone the way Maul would. He uses information. He offers the Pikes safer corridors in exchange for transport capacity. He promises Black Sun access to captured Separatist material if they keep their enforcers away from Mandalorian civilians. He warns the Hutts that any attempt to defect will result in the Republic suddenly receiving detailed evidence about specific smuggling lanes. Some of those threats are bluffs. The syndicates cannot tell which ones. Within a day, the Shadow Collective stops behaving like a loose coalition held together only by Maul's intimidation and begins behaving like an irregular strategic network. Obi-Wan tells himself this is temporary. He is maintaining the structure because he needs it to locate Maul and learn more about Sidious. Yet every compromise requires another. To track Sidious's prisoner, he needs spies. To pay spies, he needs syndicate money. To protect the routes moving that money, he needs armed escorts. To maintain control of Mandalore, he needs Almec's government and Maul's commandos. The logic of necessity becomes self-sustaining. This is exactly how the war changed the Jedi Order on a galactic scale, and now Obi-Wan is repeating the pattern personally at extraordinary speed. Bo-Katan quickly discovers that something is wrong. She expected Maul's control to weaken after the mysterious disturbance at the palace. Instead, checkpoints become more disciplined. Patrols stop chasing every night owl sighting and begin protecting infrastructure. Supply depots are moved before her people can raid them. Communications protocols change. Whoever is coordinating Maul's loyalists understands guerrilla warfare and, worse, understands how Bo-Katan thinks about Republic intervention. She eventually intercepts a transmission containing phrasing she recognizes. It is not a voice recording, only an operational directive. But the structure of the Order is unmistakably Jedi military language, adapted for Mandalorian units. Bo-Katan realizes Obi-Wan never left the planet. At first she assumes he has been recaptured and forced to advise Maul. Then one of her scouts reports seeing him walking freely inside a secure command level without guards. The truth is far worse. Bo tries to contact him through an encrypted channel she gave him during the failed rescue. Obi-Wan answers. For several seconds, neither speaks. Bo finally asks whether Maul is controlling him. Obi-Wan says no. She asks whether Satine's death has made him lose his mind. Obi-Wan tells her that Satine died because everyone around Mandalore treated the planet as a political inconvenience until Maul exploited the vacuum. He says he is trying to prevent something worse. Bo-Katan hears the lie immediately because it sounds too reasonable. She tells him that preserving Maul's government is not protecting Mandalore. Obi-Wan replies that collapsing the government without a replacement would create a syndicate war across the planet, invite separatist intervention, and almost certainly give Palpatine justification to send Republic forces. Bo says any of those outcomes are preferable to serving the man who murdered her sister. Obi-Wan's voice changes when she says it. He tells her he is not serving Maul. He is using Maul's empire to reach the Sith Master, who made the entire war possible. That is when Bo understands the depth of the break. Obi-Wan has not become cruel because he suddenly likes power. He has decided that the ends are finally important enough to justify methods he once rejected. That makes him more dangerous than Maul in a different way. Maul knows he is ruled by hatred. Obi-Wan believes he is still acting rationally. Bo-Katan refuses to join him. Her night owls continue their resistance, but the war becomes much harder. In canon, Bo can eventually seek Republic help against Maul because his presence creates a clear enemy. Here she is trying to explain that Maul still rules, his criminal network remains active, and a missing Jedi Council member may somehow be assisting him. The Republic has no official evidence. Mandalore remains outside Republic jurisdiction. Palpatine has every reason to prevent a large investigation from reaching the planet while he cleans up the consequences of his own intervention. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council knows only that Obi-Wan disappeared after entering Mandalore. His last confirmed communication indicated he was attempting to rescue Satine. Bo-Katan's rescue ship never returns him to Republic space. No body is found. The Council therefore has to confront a possibility it hates. One of its most experienced masters may be alive in enemy hands. Anakin refuses to accept any other explanation. He has spent his entire life watching Obi-Wan survive situations that should have killed him. If there is no body, he assumes his master is a prisoner. Ahsoka shares the hope, but not the certainty. She remembers Maul's specific obsession with Obi-Wan, and understands that captivity could be worse than death. Anakin immediately demands authorization to go to Mandalore. Mace Windu refuses. The Council cannot send General Skywalker and Republic troops into a neutral system based only on suspicion, especially after Obi-Wan went there without official military backing in the first place. Anakin argues that neutrality ended the moment a criminal syndicate seized the government. Mace counters that recognizing that reality publicly is a Senate decision, not something the Jedi can declare by launching an invasion. Every sentence sounds to Anakin like the kind of institutional caution Obi-Wan used to defend. With Obi-Wan missing, there is nobody in the room capable of translating the Council's reasoning into language Anakin can tolerate. Palpatine sees the opening. Publicly, he expresses deep concern over Obi-Wan Kenobi, calling him one of the Republic's greatest heroes. He authorizes expanded intelligence efforts and tells Anakin privately that he wishes the Senate could act faster. The performance is perfect because Palpatine actually does want Obi-Wan found. He simply wants to find him before the Jedi do. A fallen Kenobi working with Maul possesses dangerous knowledge, and Sidious knows that Maul will eventually use that knowledge to strike back. Anakin becomes easier to manipulate in one sense and harder in another. His anger at the Council increases because they will not let him race to Mandalore. But his attention is no longer centered on his own status, his frustrations with Obi-Wan, or his desire for greater power. It is centered on finding the man who raised him. Palpatine can feed that obsession, but he cannot fully redirect it. Every conversation about Jedi weakness ends with Anakin asking what the Chancellor's intelligence services have found about Kenobi. The 212th Attack Battalion experiences the disappearance differently. Commander Cody is ordered to continue operations under temporary Jedi leadership, while the Council determines whether Kenobi can be recovered. Cody obeys because that is what clones do, but the absence cuts through the unit. The 212th has built its command culture around Kenobi's style: disciplined, adaptable, careful with civilian lives, and based on trust between general and commander. Suddenly, the general is gone without a final order. That absence also changes Ahsoka's world at exactly the wrong time. The bombing of the Jedi Temple is approaching. In canon, Obi-Wan is one of the Council members involved in the painful decisions that follow. And although he cannot prevent Ahsoka's expulsion, his presence gives Anakin at least one familiar voice inside the institution. Here that voice is missing. Anakin is already angry, frightened, and sleeping badly because he believes Maul has his former master. When Ahsoka is accused of murder and terrorism, the second person closest to him is suddenly threatened by the same institution he thinks is failing to save the first. The temple bombing itself still occurs, because Barriss Offee's disillusionment with the Jedi has nothing to do with Obi-Wan's fate on Mandalore. Letta Termond is still used in the attack, the Republic military still becomes involved in the investigation, and Ahsoka can still be framed through the same chain of manipulated evidence. What changes is Anakin's state of mind and the Council's internal balance. Obi-Wan is not there to challenge him calmly, not there to remind him that accusation is not conviction, and not there to absorb part of his anger when the investigation turns against Ahsoka. Anakin becomes more aggressive sooner. He pushes Tarkin harder, clashes openly with council members, and interprets every procedural delay as proof that the Order has learned nothing from Obi-Wan's disappearance. Palpatine encourages the interpretation. The Chancellor tells him that institutions protect themselves first, and individuals second. He reminds Anakin that Kenobi vanished because the Council would not authorize decisive action on Mandalore. Now Ahsoka is being treated as a political liability. Palpatine never explicitly says the Jedi do not care about either of them. He lets Anakin reach the conclusion himself. Yet this manipulation has a weakness. Anakin's loyalty to Obi-Wan remains so powerful that he cannot fully accept any story in which Kenobi simply becomes an example of Jedi failure. He wants him back. That desire keeps Anakin connected to the person Palpatine eventually needs him to outgrow and resent. In the original timeline, Sidious can slowly intensify tensions between Anakin and Obi-Wan, while knowing Obi-Wan will continue behaving like a Jedi. Here, Obi-Wan is a missing variable. Palpatine cannot safely tell Anakin to let him go, because doing so would sound suspiciously convenient. Ahsoka's trial therefore becomes a second fracture, rather than a replacement for the first. Anakin still uncovers Barriss as the true bomber. He still bursts into the tribunal with the evidence needed to clear Ahsoka. The Council still offers her a path back. Without Obi-Wan present, however, the apology feels even thinner. Ahsoka has watched Anakin nearly tear himself apart, trying to save her, while the Council that once trusted him is simultaneously refusing to let him search freely for Obi-Wan. She sees an Order overwhelmed by war and politics, and she leaves as she does in canon. Anakin now loses both of the relationships that most directly connected him to ordinary Jedi life within a remarkably short period. Ahsoka walks away voluntarily. Obi-Wan is presumed captive or missing. The result could have accelerated his fall to Sidious dramatically if nothing else changed. Palpatine recognizes that possibility and begins investing more heavily in private contact with him. But while Anakin is emotionally vulnerable, he is also becoming obsessed with an objective Sidious cannot control, finding Maul. That objective produces the first real break in Palpatine's schedule. Anakin begins using military intelligence outside normal assignments, asking Rex and sympathetic officers to flag reports involving Mandalorian super commandos, Pike shipping, or Black Sun movements. He contacts bounty hunters he has encountered during the war. He questions Hondo Ohnaka, who is amused by the idea that Kenobi of all people might have disappeared into the underworld. Hondo initially assumes the Jedi is dead. When Anakin describes the evidence, even Hondo becomes less certain. Ahsoka, now outside the Order, quietly joins the search. She has no commission and no obligation to do so, but Obi-Wan helped raise her as surely as Anakin did. More importantly, she understands networks the Jedi cannot officially use. Her time dealing with smugglers, refugees, Onderonian rebels, and people outside Republic structures gives her a different approach. She and Anakin begin investigating separately, so the Council cannot shut down the entire effort with one order. On Mandalore, Obi-Wan is already using those same networks to locate Maul. Sidious has taken his former apprentice off-world, but the transfer cannot be completely invisible. Prisoner transports need pilots, guards, fuel, and destination codes. Obi-Wan cannot access classified Chancellor-level files anymore, so he works backward from logistics. A Pike informant reports an unusual Republic security movement that never entered standard manifests. Black Sun identifies a ship that arrived under diplomatic clearance and left without customs inspection. Mandalorian surveillance shows timing that aligns with Sidious's departure. Maul's absence becomes a test of whether Obi-Wan is truly working with the Shadow Collective or merely using it. If his only goal were to learn about Sidious, he could take the intelligence he has gathered and send it anonymously to the Jedi. He considers doing exactly that. Several times, he opens an encrypted channel and prepares a message for Yoda. Each time he stops, he imagines the Council ordering him to return, placing Mandalore under observation, and burying Maul's information until it can be verified through proper channels. He no longer trusts the process enough to surrender control. Instead, he organizes a rescue. The operation uses everything that makes Obi-Wan dangerous. Rather than assaulting a secure facility directly, he creates simultaneous problems along the prisoner transfer chain. A Pike ship deliberately suffers a reactor emergency near one checkpoint, forcing security craft to divert. Black Sun slices a communications relay. Mandalorian infiltrators pose as Republic contractors. Obi-Wan himself enters under an old diplomatic identity that has not yet been fully scrubbed from secondary systems, because the bureaucracy assumes a missing Jedi Master is either dead or a victim, not someone trying to penetrate Republic-controlled infrastructure. When he finally reaches Maul, the former Sith is injured, restrained, and furious. The reunion is not warm. Maul's first reaction is suspicion that Sidious has somehow turned Kenobi into bait. Obi-Wan cuts the restraints and tells him that if Sidious had control of him, Maul would already be dead. Maul asks why he came. Obi-Wan answers that Maul still owes him the truth about the Sith Master. They escape through a route Obi-Wan designed to minimize direct confrontation, but the plan begins to unravel when security teams recognize him. The Republic has circulated Kenobi's status throughout high-level channels by now. A clone officer orders him to stand down and announces relief that General Kenobi has been found. For a moment, Obi-Wan freezes. The clone is not an enemy. He sounds genuinely happy to see him alive. Behind Obi-Wan, Maul prepares to attack. Obi-Wan could surrender. If he does, Maul will be recaptured, but Obi-Wan will return to the Jedi alive. The entire fall could stop here before it becomes irreversible. Instead, he uses the Force to slam the clone squad into the walls, hard enough to incapacitate them. One trooper is seriously injured. Maul laughs as they run, because Kenobi has just attacked the very soldiers he used to command. Obi-Wan hates the laughter, but he does not go back. When they return to Mandalore, Maul finds the Shadow Collective damaged but alive. Almec's government still functions. The syndicates have not completely defected. Bo-Katan's resistance has failed to take Sundari. Obi-Wan has preserved Maul's throne without ever sitting on it. That changes their relationship. Maul no longer treats Kenobi as a captive being corrupted for amusement. He begins treating him as a genuine partner, though the word partner in Maul's mind still implies eventual domination. Maul offers Obi-Wan Savage's place. He does not mean brotherhood. He means that there can be two of them at the center of the new power structure, united against Sidious. Obi-Wan rejects the Sith framing again. He tells Maul that the rule of two is exactly the prison that produced both of them. Maul was discarded when Sidious found him inconvenient. Dooku replaced him. Savage was allowed to believe he could stand beside Maul only until Sidious arrived and demonstrated that the Sith would never tolerate it. Obi-Wan says if they build another hierarchy based on master and apprentice, they have learned nothing. Their version of the Shadow Collective evolves accordingly. Maul remains the symbolic ruler of Mandalore because he possesses the Darksaber and won the throne through combat. Obi-Wan becomes the architect of strategy. Almec continues as civilian face. The criminal syndicates retain autonomy in their own territories, but contribute intelligence, ships, and money to joint operations. Maul wants conquest. Obi-Wan wants leverage. The compromise is expansion through pressure rather than open annexation. The Collective begins attacking Separatist and Republic logistics rather than major fleets. Obi-Wan knows that a third faction cannot win the Clone Wars by matching either side ship for ship. The Republic possesses an industrial base and clone army the Collective cannot reproduce. The Separatists can manufacture droids in quantities Mandalore cannot approach. But both sides depend on routes, depots, fuel, communications, and predictable command structures. A criminal empire is uniquely suited to attack those things. This is where the Shadow Collective becomes exponentially more dangerous than it was in canon. Maul had ambition, charisma, cruelty, and enough strategic intelligence to assemble powerful groups. What he lacked was years of experience running campaigns inside the Republic's military system. Obi-Wan knows how Jedi generals coordinate with clone naval officers. He knows how long requests take to move from Sector Command to Coruscant. He knows what information a Jedi will prioritize during a crisis. He can predict not individual decisions perfectly, but institutional habits. Count Dooku quickly recognizes the pattern. Reports of raids begin showing a level of operational discipline unlike ordinary criminal piracy. Grievous dismisses the syndicates as vermin, but Dooku has fought Obi-Wan too many times to miss certain signatures. A convoy is not destroyed where it is strongest. It is manipulated into changing course, and then struck at the point where its escorts become separated. A planetary governor is not assassinated. He is forced into making a political choice that weakens his own alliance. These are Kenobi solutions stripped of Jedi restraint. The result is the beginning of a genuine Third Front. Separatist droid fleets attack Syndicate holdings under the justification of anti-piracy operations. Republic forces pursue the same networks for attacks on military supply. Mandalore sits at the center as a politically awkward fortress neither side can assault casually without wider consequences. The Shadow Collective responds by making itself too expensive to ignore and too distributed to destroy in one campaign. Bo-Katan suffers most from this consolidation. Her resistance depended on the hope that Maul's foreign criminal alliance would eventually alienate Mandalore or collapse under its own contradictions. Obi-Wan works deliberately to prevent both. He orders Almec to restore local services neglected during the coup. He limits overt syndicate presence in Sundari because seeing Pike or Black Sun enforcers on the streets would remind Mandalorians they are occupied by outsiders. Maul's super commandos remain the visible military force, preserving the appearance of Mandalorian rule. This creates the ugliest contradiction in Obi-Wan's new life. Some of the policies he imposes genuinely reduce civilian suffering. He stops arbitrary reprisals. He keeps criminal syndicates away from ordinary Mandalorian neighborhoods. He discourages executions. From the outside, he can point to these outcomes as evidence that his presence is restraining Maul. Yet the government itself remains founded on a violent coup, Satine's murder, criminal coercion, and fear. Obi-Wan is making tyranny more efficient and humane enough to survive. The Jedi eventually receive enough intelligence to confirm the impossible. A captured Black Sun operative mentions the General advising Maul. A Republic listening post intercepts a tactical transmission, carrying encryption habits once used by the 212th. Then, Ahsoka obtains visual proof from an underworld contact. A grainy recording of Obi-Wan entering a Shadow Collective command meeting beside Maul, unrestrained and armed. She brings it to Anakin personally. Anakin watches the recording 3 times. His first reaction is denial. He says it could be altered. His second is anger at Maul because he assumes Obi-Wan is being forced. His third comes when Ahsoka points out the detail neither of them wants to say aloud. Obi-Wan is carrying himself normally. There are no guards watching him, no restraints. Maul turns his back on him during the footage without concern. Whatever happened on Mandalore, Obi-Wan is there by choice. Anakin does not accept that choice as permanent. He tells Ahsoka that if Obi-Wan can be turned, he can be brought back. The wording reveals how frightened he is. He is already imagining this as a fall to the dark side, rather than a hostage situation. Ahsoka agrees to help, but she warns him that charging directly into Mandalore is exactly what Maul would expect. Anakin says he does not care what Maul expects. Ahsoka tells him that is the kind of answer Obi-Wan used to stop him from giving. Anakin hates the idea but agrees. When they present the evidence, the council is shaken. Mace Windu's response is harsher than Anakin can tolerate. He says they must consider Kenobi compromised and potentially hostile until proven otherwise. Anakin hears condemnation. Yoda hears necessity. Plo Koon focuses on the possibility that Obi-Wan is acting under dark side influence. The council authorizes an investigation and preparations for a recovery mission, but it refuses to promise that Obi-Wan will be treated as an innocent prisoner if he attacks Republic forces. Anakin nearly explodes. Ahsoka stops him. She understands the difference between refusing to abandon Obi-Wan and pretending his choices have no consequences. If the evidence is real, then Obi-Wan has already helped Maul attack Republic assets. Soldiers may have died because of his plans. Love cannot mean erasing that reality. This is a lesson Anakin desperately needs. and it is bitterly ironic that he learns it while trying to save the man who once tried to teach him the same distinction. The recovery mission does not begin with a fleet. The Council understands that a public republic assault on Mandalore could push every neutral system toward panic and give Palpatine another excuse to expand executive power. Instead, Anakin is authorized to follow the intelligence trail with a small team, while Republic intelligence monitors the larger network. Ahsoka is not formally under Council command, but she joins because both Anakin and Plo Koon argue that her underworld contacts make her essential. Rex accompanies Anakin with a small clone detachment. Cody asks to come and is refused at first because the Council fears his attachment to Kenobi could compromise the mission. The irony is not lost on Anakin. The evidence enrages Anakin because it destroys the last comforting possibility. A prisoner can be forced to reveal codes. A mind-controlled captive can be made to stand beside Maul. But this level of sustained strategic planning requires participation. Anakin begins asking the question he has avoided. What could Maul have shown Obi-Wan that made him believe this was preferable to returning home? Ahsoka has an answer he does not like. Maybe Maul did not show him anything. Maybe Obi-Wan simply broke. She does not say this to condemn him. She says it because Ahsoka understands what losing faith in a structure feels like, and she knows that pain can make choices feel inevitable when they are not. Anakin insists Obi-Wan is stronger than that. Ahsoka replies that strength is not immunity. The people who believe they cannot fall are sometimes the least prepared to notice when they are falling. Their investigation eventually draws Maul's attention, exactly as Ahsoka feared. Rather than hide from Anakin, Maul wants the confrontation. Turning Obi-Wan is only half the revenge if Skywalker never sees what his master has become. Maul begins leaking information deliberately, guiding Anakin toward a derelict industrial moon used as a temporary collective staging point. Obi-Wan recognizes the trap and objects. He knows Anakin will come emotionally charged and that Maul intends to exploit it. The accusation works because Obi-Wan has been avoiding direct contact. He has sent no message to Anakin, partly to protect the Shadow Collective's position, and partly because he cannot bear to hear Anakin ask him to come home. Maul interprets that avoidance as fear. Obi-Wan interprets it as prudence. Both are partly right, so Obi-Wan agrees to the meeting on his own terms. He insists there will be no ambush intended to kill Anakin. Maul promises, which means very little, but he is genuinely more interested in psychological damage than immediate murder. The location is prepared with hidden Mandalorian teams as insurance. Obi-Wan waits in an abandoned assembly hall while Maul watches from elsewhere in the complex. Anakin arrives with Ahsoka despite orders to wait for Rex's team to secure the perimeter. The moment he sees Obi-Wan, all prepared speeches disappear. Kenobi is thinner, more tired, dressed in dark Mandalorian field clothing rather than Jedi robes, but unmistakably himself. He carries a lightsaber. His eyes are not permanently yellow. There is no visible mark proving the dark side has claimed him. That makes the situation harder, not easier. Anakin asks what Maul did to him. Obi-Wan says Maul killed Satine. Anakin already knows that much from Bo-Katan's reports. He asks again what Maul did after that. Obi-Wan answers that Maul told him the truth about the war, that the Jedi are fighting inside a conflict shaped by a Sith Master they have failed to identify, and that every victory is bringing the Republic closer to whatever outcome Sidious wants. Anakin tells him they already know Dooku serves a Sith Master. That does not justify joining another Darksider and attacking Republic forces. Obi-Wan accepts the accusation more calmly than Anakin expected. He does not claim innocence. He says the Republic's war effort is serving the enemy. If disrupting its logistics slows the timetable Sidious has constructed, then those attacks may save more lives than another Jedi victory on another front. Ahsoka immediately challenges him. She asks whether the clone troopers killed in those attacks agreed to become sacrifices in Obi-Wan's theory. The question lands because Obi-Wan cannot dismiss clones as faceless soldiers. He knows Cody, Rex, Waxer, Boyle, and hundreds of others. His plans may have been designed to minimize casualties, but people still died. Ahsoka says the Council once justified hurting her because it believed the larger institution had to be protected. Obi-Wan is now making the same argument with different words. For a moment, the old Obi-Wan is visible. Shame crosses his face. Then Maul steps from the shadows and deliberately destroys the opening. He tells Ahsoka that Jedi hypocrisy is not the subject. Sidious is. Anakin ignites his lightsaber instantly. Maul does the same, but Obi-Wan moves between them. Anakin stares at him. The sight of Obi-Wan physically protecting Maul is more devastating than any intercepted recording. He tells Obi-Wan to move. Kenobi refuses. He says killing Maul now destroys their best source on Sidious. Anakin says Maul murdered Satine. Obi-Wan's expression changes, and Anakin realizes too late that he has used the one argument most likely to make the situation worse. Obi-Wan says he remembers every second of it. Maul smiles because the pain is doing his work for him. Ahsoka sees that and tries to redirect the conversation. She asks Maul what he actually knows. Not philosophy, not accusations, evidence. Maul explains the rule of two in the terms Sidious taught him. There is a master and an apprentice, but the titles do not prevent betrayal or replacement. Dooku is Sidious's current apprentice. Maul was one before him. Savage was never recognized by Sidious at all. The Sith Master has spent the war hidden, while Dooku plays the visible enemy. Anakin asks where Sidious is. Maul says closer than the Jedi can imagine. Obi-Wan adds that Sidious was able to arrive on Mandalore personally with extraordinary speed after Maul seized power, then remove him through channels that avoided normal Republic scrutiny. Whoever Sidious is, he possesses access to the heart of galactic government. This is an inference Obi-Wan has built from his rescue of Maul, not a magical revelation. It is also difficult to ignore. Ahsoka asks why Maul does not simply tell the Jedi the name. Maul says because the Jedi would not believe him until Sidious was ready for them to believe. He enjoys the frustration, but there is another reason. Information is his leverage. Obi-Wan has spent months trying to extract more from him. Their alliance is partly built around that unresolved secret. Anakin notices something important. Obi-Wan does not know everything Maul knows. The partnership is not trust. Maul is still manipulating him. Anakin says exactly that. Obi-Wan answers that he is aware. Anakin almost laughs from disbelief. If he knows Maul is manipulating him, why stay? Obi-Wan finally tells him the truth he has been avoiding, because going back would mean returning to the same war and pretending Satine's death changed nothing, because the Jedi have become servants of a republic whose chancellor grows stronger every month. Because Maul, monster that he is, was right that someone is controlling both sides. Because every instinct Obi-Wan has tells him the Council will continue reacting to battles until the Sith decide to end the game. And because after Satine died, Obi-Wan discovered that anger gave him the power to act when acceptance felt indistinguishable from surrender. Anakin understands the last sentence better than Obi-Wan realizes. He remembers his mother. He remembers the Tusken camp. He knows exactly what it feels like to let grief become violence and then carry the secret afterward. The difference is that Anakin has never told Obi-Wan what happened on Tatooine. He has no moral high ground he can comfortably claim. For the first time, Anakin sees his own darkest logic reflected in the man who used to warn him against it. He lowers his saber slightly and tells Obi-Wan to come back anyway. Not because the Council deserves obedience, not because everything can be forgiven. Come back because Anakin needs him. The appeal is personal rather than ideological, and it nearly works. Maul senses the shift and attacks. He does not attack Anakin directly. He hurls debris toward Ahsoka, forcing Anakin to turn and protect her. At the same time, hidden Mandalorians open fire from the upper gantries. Obi-Wan shouts at Maul that this was not the agreement. Maul responds that attachments always reveal weakness. The entire meeting was a test of whether Kenobi would choose Skywalker or the new alliance. Obi-Wan's rage erupts, but this time it is directed at Maul. He slams Maul across the chamber with the force hard enough to crack a support column. Anakin sees the power in the attack and feels the darkness behind it. For one impossible second, he thinks Obi-Wan has turned back toward him. Then Kenobi whirls and disarms two of Rex's arriving clones with equally violent telekinesis. He is not choosing the Jedi. He is rejecting anyone who tries to control the outcome. The confrontation becomes a four-sided chaos. Anakin and Ahsoka defend themselves against Mandalorians while trying not to kill them. Rex's team secures exits. Maul attacks Anakin, eager to measure Sidious's chosen prospect. Obi-Wan intervenes whenever either side gains decisive advantage. His objective is no longer clear even to himself. He does not want Maul dead because Maul possesses knowledge about Sidious. He does not want Anakin hurt. He does not want to surrender. Every attachment he tried to manage through control is now pulling in opposite directions. Eventually, Anakin and Obi-Wan cross blades. The sound silences everything else in Anakin's mind. Their styles know one another too well. Obi-Wan's Sorsu defense was built through years of discipline, patience, and economy. The dark side does not erase that mastery. If anything, it makes it more dangerous in short bursts because Obi-Wan is willing to convert defensive openings into attacks he once would have rejected. Anakin's aggressive Form V pressure is familiar to him from thousands of training exchanges and battles fought side by side. Neither truly wants to kill the other, which makes the duel more emotional rather than less. Anakin attacks to force Obi-Wan back and create an opening to disarm him. Obi-Wan counters to prove he cannot be dragged home. Anakin accuses him of becoming Maul's weapon. Obi-Wan says the Jedi already made both of them weapons for the Republic. Anakin says Maul killed the woman he loved. Obi-Wan answers that the Republic let the system that killed her grow because intervention was politically inconvenient. Ahsoka watches and realizes the duel is becoming an argument neither man can win with a blade. She disengages from Maul long enough to shout at Obi-Wan that Satine was a pacifist. Whatever he thinks he is doing in her name, she would never have wanted Mandalore turned into the center of a criminal war. Obi-Wan falters. Maul attacks Ahsoka for saying it. Anakin intercepts him. The two duel while Obi-Wan stands frozen for a fraction too long. Maul's rage exposes the truth Ahsoka has just touched. Maul does not care about Satine's political vision. He cares that her death can be used to shape Kenobi. Obi-Wan has told himself he is staying partly to protect Mandalore from worse outcomes, but the person at the center of his alliance is the man who deliberately murdered Satine because he wanted Obi-Wan to suffer. The contradiction becomes unbearable. Obi-Wan turns on Maul fully. He and Anakin fight side by side for several exchanges exactly as they have countless times before, their instincts returning faster than conscious trust. Maul is forced backward. For one brief moment, the alternate timeline appears ready to repair itself. Then, Republic gunships arrive outside. The Council approved support once Rex reported contact, and clone forces begin surrounding the complex. Maul tells Obi-Wan that this is what the Jedi always do, speak of rescue while bringing an army. He says Kenobi will be arrested, interrogated, judged, and used as evidence of the Order's moral superiority. Obi-Wan knows Mace Windu did in fact authorize him to be treated as potentially hostile. The fear of surrender returns. Anakin tells him not to listen. He promises he will stand beside Obi-Wan through whatever happens. It is sincere, but Obi-Wan hears the one thing Anakin cannot promise, that the Council will allow him freedom after months of helping Maul. Kenobi looks at Ahsoka, the person who was expelled and handed to a Republic tribunal when the Council believed the evidence against her. She knows exactly why he is afraid. Ahsoka tells him the Council failed her, but leaving was still her choice. She did not join the people who framed her. That is the distinction Obi-Wan keeps trying to avoid. Maul detonates charges beneath the facility before Obi-Wan can answer. The floor collapses, separating the groups. By the time Anakin and Ahsoka escape the wreckage, Maul and Obi-Wan are gone. The mission fails to recover Kenobi, but it changes everything. Anakin has seen enough to know Obi-Wan is not beyond reach. He also has heard enough about Sidious to take Maul's claims seriously. The Council receives Rex's recordings of the conversation. For the first time, Maul's knowledge is not an abstract rumor passed through criminals. Jedi witnesses have heard a former Sith apprentice state plainly that Dooku serves a hidden master, operating close to the center of the Republic. That does not immediately expose Palpatine. The Jedi already believe a second Sith exists. The new information narrows the problem, but also creates uncertainty, because Maul is an unreliable source. Mace argues that Maul could be trying to turn the Jedi against the Chancellor or Senate deliberately. Yoda agrees that deception is possible, but the speed and secrecy of Sidious's Mandalore intervention cannot be ignored. The Council begins reviewing unusual movements around the Chancellor's office, Republic intelligence, and the military chain of command. Palpatine learns that the meeting occurred through his own intelligence channels. He does not know exactly what Maul revealed, which is worse than knowing. For years, Sidious has maintained control by compartmentalizing truth. Dooku knows one part, the Kaminoans another, the Jedi another, and the Senate almost nothing. Maul and fallen Obi-Wan are now actively connecting compartments. Anakin has heard enough to become suspicious of the architecture of the war itself. Sidious changes strategy. The original long game of slowly bringing Anakin toward a final choice remains possible, but it is no longer safe to assume Obi-Wan will occupy the role Sidious expected. In the canonical endgame, Obi-Wan's loyalty to the Jedi helps isolate Anakin, because Palpatine can present the Council and the people Anakin loves as pulling him in opposite directions. A fallen Obi-Wan destroys that stable structure. Anakin is not resentful of Kenobi's righteousness. He is desperate to save him. If Obi-Wan returns and exposes Maul's warnings, he could become the person who pulls Anakin away from Palpatine at the critical moment. At the same time, Obi-Wan's fall gives Sidious a new temptation to exploit. If Palpatine can arrange for Anakin to kill his former master in anger, the act might accomplish more than years of subtle resentment ever could. He begins considering a revised initiation, not Anakin choosing between Mace Windu and Sidious, but Anakin choosing vengeance against the fallen man he loves most. The plan is dangerous because Maul wants the reverse. Maul wants Obi-Wan to help destroy Sidious and, if possible, turn Anakin against him. The same relationship has become the focus of both dark side factions. Obi-Wan Kenobi, once the stabilizing center between Anakin's impulses and the Jedi Council, is now the battlefield on which two Sith-trained manipulators compete for Skywalker's future. Season 6 events make that competition even more unstable. Tup's inhibitor chip malfunctions, causing him to kill Jedi General Tippler. Fives investigates and uncovers the organic implants inside the clones. Without Obi-Wan on the Council, one experienced voice is missing from the response, but Anakin and Rex are even more sensitive to hidden conspiracies because of Maul's warnings. When Fives tries to tell them that the Chancellor was involved in the events surrounding his investigation, Anakin does not dismiss the possibility as completely as he might have months earlier. Fives still faces the same enormous obstacles. Nalase and the Kaminoans have explanations prepared. Palpatine still manipulates the ARC trooper's treatment and creates circumstances that make him appear dangerous. Commander Fox can still shoot him during the confrontation on Coruscant. The point is not that Obi-Wan's fall magically saves Fives. The point is that Fives dies into a galaxy where Anakin already has reason to suspect that a hidden Sith is using Republic institutions. Rex remembers Fives saying the chips affect every clone. Anakin remembers Maul saying Sidious's plan reaches closer than the Jedi understand. Ahsoka, though outside the Order, remembers being framed by evidence that institutions accepted too quickly. These threads begin reinforcing one another. Rex quietly asks Kix to examine medical records. Anakin brings the concern to Yoda and Plo Koon rather than letting the matter disappear as the ravings of a dead trooper. The investigation remains difficult, but the Jedi are now looking in the correct direction earlier, when they later uncover the truth that Tyrannus is Count Dooku, and that Dooku was involved in the creation of the clone army. The revelation lands differently. In canon, the Council discovers this horrifying connection, but continues using the clones because the war leaves them no practical alternative and because the larger purpose remains unclear. Here the discovery connects directly with Fives' warning and Maul's claim that Sidious controls the shape of the war. The Council cannot yet prove that the chips are designed for Jedi extermination, but it understands that the army was secretly influenced by the Sith. Yoda orders discreet testing of senior commanders. Rex volunteers first. Cody, still grieving Kenobi's disappearance, is included because he commands one of the most important formations in the Grand Army. The chip is found. Whether the Jedi can safely remove millions of implants before Palpatine reacts becomes a race against time. Obi-Wan learns about the investigation through stolen communications and realizes something Maul did not know. The clone army itself may contain the mechanism of Sidious's final move. The information vindicates his belief that the war is a trap, but it also fills him with guilt. Cody and the 212th are inside that trap, and Obi-Wan has spent months attacking the Republic, rather than warning the men who trusted him. For the first time since Satine's death, his anger points inward without immediately becoming self-justification. Maul notices the change and despises it. He tells Kenobi that guilt is another Jedi chain. Obi-Wan answers that refusing guilt is simply a way to avoid responsibility. Their alliance begins to fracture philosophically. Maul wanted to turn Obi-Wan away from the Jedi, but he assumed the result would be a man who embraced hatred the way Maul does. Instead, he has created someone who uses the dark side while still carrying a Jedi-shaped conscience. That conscience is becoming increasingly difficult to control. By the final months of the Clone Wars, Maul and Obi-Wan have succeeded in doing something Sidious never intended. They have made Mandalore too strategically important for the Republic to continue treating as someone else's problem. Shadow Collective raids have begun affecting major military supply lines. Evidence connecting the syndicates to attacks on Republic and Separatist assets is overwhelming. Bo-Katan has provided intelligence showing that Maul's commandos still control the capital. Most importantly, the Jedi now possess credible evidence that Obi-Wan Kenobi is alive, voluntarily operating beside Maul, and connected to information about the hidden Sith Master behind the war. The Senate finally authorizes limited military action. Palpatine does not want a Republic campaign on Mandalore, but opposing one too openly would now look suspicious. Instead, he shapes its objectives. The public mission is to dismantle a criminal terrorist threat and restore local security. The private Jedi objective is to capture Maul and Obi-Wan alive if possible. Palpatine quietly ensures that the force committed is large enough to create chaos, but not large enough to guarantee a rapid victory. For Anakin, the campaign becomes personal before the first ship leaves hyperspace. The Council initially considers keeping him away because his attachment to Obi-Wan is obvious. That suggestion lasts only until military planners confront the reality that few Jedi understand Kenobi's tactics better than Skywalker does. If Obi-Wan is designing Mandalore's defenses, Anakin may be the best person alive to predict them. The same relationship that makes him emotionally compromised also makes him operationally essential. Cody demands to participate, and this time, the Council agrees. The 212th has spent months fighting without its general, and Cody knows Obi-Wan's battlefield habits nearly as well as Anakin. Rex and elements of the 501st join the task force. Ahsoka travels as an advisor because Bo-Katan trusts her, and because she has been part of the investigation from outside the Order. The arrangement resembles the later canonical Siege of Mandalore in broad shape, but the purpose is completely different. They are not merely removing Maul. They are trying to recover one of the Jedi Order's own fallen masters. Obi-Wan knows they are coming before the fleet arrives. He helped design too much of Republic operational doctrine not to recognize the preparations. Mandalore's defenses are built around avoiding the kind of decisive fleet battle the Republic prefers. Civilian shelters are opened, military assets are dispersed. Shadow Collective ships hide among routes that make orbital bombardment politically impossible. Maul wants to turn Sundari into a fortress. Obi-Wan insists that defending the capital through a prolonged urban battle would slaughter the population Satine died trying to protect. They argue more violently than ever. Maul accuses Kenobi of allowing old attachment to weaken strategy. Obi-Wan tells him that if Mandalore is reduced to rubble, there will be nothing left to rule. Maul says fear will keep the people obedient. Obi-Wan answers that fear kept Savage obedient until Sidious killed him. The reference nearly starts a duel between them. Their partnership has reached the point where each understands exactly how to hurt the other. Maul can invoke Satine. Obi-Wan can invoke Savage and Sidious. What once made them effective together now makes them unstable. Yet neither walks away because the external threat is larger. Sidious still lives. The Republic is arriving. Bo-Katan's resistance is moving in coordination with it. Separation would make both easier to destroy. The campaign begins with simultaneous landings outside Sundari and strikes against Shadow Collective depots across the system. Cody's 212th targets military infrastructure, while Rex's units secure approach corridors. Bo-Katan leads Night Owls against Super Commando positions. Ahsoka works with the Mandalorians rather than serving as a formal Jedi general, much as she does in canon, but the Council has given her wider access because the mission's political ambiguity makes her independence useful. The first engagements reveal how much Obi-Wan has changed and how much of him remains. Republic troops advance into an apparent gap, only for the route to collapse behind them as Mandalorian teams cut communications and disable transports. The maneuver is classic Kenobi: draw an aggressive force into overextending, isolate it, and force surrender rather than destruction. Cody recognizes it instantly. He orders his men to stop pursuing and establish defensive positions. The trap fails because student and commander remember the teacher. Obi-Wan watches the live tactical display and knows Cody made the decision before the report arrives. For the first time in months, he smiles without bitterness. Maul sees the reaction and asks whether Kenobi is proud that his former soldiers are making the invasion harder to defeat. Obi-Wan says he is proud that Cody is alive. Maul tells him that sentiment will eventually get them both killed. Anakin leads another push through the industrial sector and deliberately uses tactics Obi-Wan would expect him not to use. Instead of charging through the strongest route, he slows down, deploys scouts, and lets Cody's formations create the apparent main effort. Obi-Wan recognizes the change as Ahsoka's influence. She has spent months forcing Anakin to think instead of react. That realization produces a feeling dangerously close to relief. The people Obi-Wan left behind have continued growing without him. The emotional contradiction makes him reckless. He decides to confront Anakin personally before Republic forces can reach the palace. Maul objects because every previous encounter has pulled Kenobi closer to leaving. Obi-Wan says hiding from Anakin will not stop the invasion. Maul finally agrees on the condition that he accompanies him. Kenobi refuses. Maul says then there is no meeting. They compromise in the worst possible way. Obi-Wan goes alone, while Maul secretly follows through the lower city. Anakin and Obi-Wan meet in a transit hub emptied of civilians. This time, there is no audience, no hidden speech prepared by Maul, and no immediate army around them. Anakin lowers his weapon before Obi-Wan can speak. He says he is not there to fight. Obi-Wan answers that Anakin brought thousands of clones. Anakin says he brought them because Maul has turned Mandalore into a military base, and because Obi-Wan helped him attack the Republic. Both statements are true. Anakin tells him the Council has learned more. Fives was right about the implants in the clones. Dooku was involved in the creation of the army through the identity of Tyrannus. Senior clones are being examined quietly. The Jedi now believe the Sith conspiracy may reach into the Republic's command structure. Obi-Wan listens without interrupting, and with each sentence his months of certainty become less stable. The Jedi did investigate. They did connect evidence. They did not simply continue fighting forever, as Maul predicted. Then Anakin gives him the most important information. The Council is investigating Palpatine's inner circle. Obi-Wan goes still. He asks why Palpatine specifically. Anakin says not specifically enough to arrest him, but the Chancellor's control over military security, his proximity to the clone program's chain of authority, and Maul's statements about Sidious being at the center of the Republic have made the office impossible to exclude. Anakin still struggles to believe Palpatine himself could be the Sith Lord. The Chancellor has been his friend since he was a child, but he is no longer willing to dismiss the possibility simply because it hurts. Obi-Wan realizes Sidious's greatest shield may be Anakin's affection. Suddenly, Maul's refusal to name Sidious looks less like necessary leverage and more like manipulation. If Maul knows the identity and has withheld it, then he has allowed Anakin to remain close to the Sith Master, while claiming their entire alliance exists to stop him. Maul steps into the station before Obi-Wan can finish the thought. He says Skywalker is finally asking the correct question. Anakin ignites his saber but does not attack. He asks Maul directly whether Palpatine is Darth Sidious. Maul looks at Obi-Wan, then at Anakin, and understands that withholding the answer has become more dangerous than giving it. He says yes. The name lands harder than any strike. Anakin refuses to believe him at first. Maul describes Sidious as the man who trained him before Naboo, the architect who discarded him and later took Dooku as apprentice. Obi-Wan adds the evidence he reconstructed from Sidious's secret travel to Mandalore and Maul's detention. The hidden movement of the prisoner passed through channels available only to the highest levels of Republic authority. Palpatine's office sits at the intersection of every unexplained thread. Anakin accuses Maul of lying to turn him against the Chancellor. Maul says he does not need Anakin to trust him. He needs him to look. It is nearly identical to the method Palpatine himself uses. Give Anakin enough truth that he does the rest internally. Obi-Wan makes the choice Maul has feared. He tells Anakin to send the warning to the Council. Maul attacks him. The duel between them has been coming since the moment the alliance began. Maul accuses Obi-Wan of crawling back to the Jedi as soon as they offer him absolution. Obi-Wan says this has nothing to do with absolution. Maul knew Sidious's identity and kept it hidden while claiming they were partners. Maul replies that information is power, and Kenobi should understand that by now. Obi-Wan says he understands it perfectly. He simply no longer accepts Maul's right to decide who gets the truth. Their blades collide with years of hatred behind every movement. This is not the disciplined Kenobi who fought Maul while protecting Satine's memory, and it is not the detached Maul of a calculated duel. Both use the dark side. Obi-Wan's style remains fundamentally defensive, but his counters are vicious. He attacks old injuries, uses force strikes to slam Maul against walls, and allows anger to increase his physical pressure. Maul is delighted, even while furious, because Kenobi is finally fighting him the way he always wanted. Anakin could help Obi-Wan kill Maul. Instead, he uses the opening to transmit the warning. Ahsoka and Rex relay it through multiple channels so it cannot be intercepted easily. Mace Windu, Yoda, and the Council receive a message no one expected to hear. Maul has identified Supreme Chancellor Palpatine as Darth Sidious, and Obi-Wan Kenobi has corroborating evidence. The Council does not immediately accept the claim as proven, but there is no time for normal procedure. Mace orders Palpatine placed under discreet observation, while Jedi on Coruscant verify his movements. Yoda warns that if the accusation is true, the Chancellor may sense the investigation through the Force. The Jedi accelerate the clone chip examinations. Every hour matters. Sidious feels the board move. He does not know the exact content of Anakin's transmission immediately, but he senses fear and resolve spreading through the Jedi leadership. More importantly, he senses Anakin's relationship with him change. The uncertainty he spent years cultivating has shifted direction. Anakin is no longer primarily wondering whether the Council trusts him. He is wondering whether Palpatine has lied to him for most of his life. Palpatine triggers the contingency he has been preparing for exactly this kind of disruption. The Separatist strike on Coruscant is accelerated. General Grievous's attack serves several purposes at once. It plunges the capital into crisis, forces the Jedi to defend the population instead of quietly surrounding the Chancellor, and creates the conditions for Palpatine to appear as a victim rather than suspect. Dooku takes the Chancellor aboard the Invisible Hand as planned, but the timing is more desperate than in canon. The abduction is no longer merely the theatrical setup for Anakin to replace Dooku. It is also an emergency extraction from a city where the Jedi are beginning to identify Sidious. Anakin receives the recall, while Maul and Obi-Wan are still fighting on Mandalore. The decision is brutal. He has spent months trying to bring Obi-Wan back, and now his former master is physically in front of him at the exact moment Coruscant is attacked. Obi-Wan tells him to go. Anakin refuses. Obi-Wan shouts that if Palpatine is Sidious, the attack on Coruscant is not a coincidence. That finally reaches him. Ahsoka stays behind with Bo-Katan and the Mandalorian Resistance while Anakin and much of the 501st return toward Coruscant. Cody and the 212th remain as the primary Republic ground force because extracting every unit would surrender the campaign. The separation places Obi-Wan and Cody on the same battlefield, just as the galaxy approaches Order 66. On Coruscant, Anakin enters the rescue operation with a level of suspicion he never possesses in the original timeline. The Chancellor appears captive. Dooku appears to be the obvious enemy. The visual story tells Anakin that Maul lied. Yet the Force feels wrong. Palpatine is too calm. Dooku is too focused on Anakin. The entire confrontation feels less like a rescue than an examination. Anakin defeats Dooku after a brutal duel. Palpatine tells him to kill the Count. In canon, Anakin obeys after a moment of hesitation, murdering an unarmed prisoner and immediately recognizing that it was wrong. Here, Maul's warning changes the meaning of the order. If Dooku is Sidious's apprentice, then Dooku may be the single best living witness capable of confirming Palpatine's identity. Killing him would destroy evidence. Anakin does not strike. Palpatine pushes harder, telling him Dooku is too dangerous to live. Anakin turns his lightsaber off and says that is exactly why the Council needs to question him. For perhaps the first time in years, Sidious's expression nearly breaks in front of him. Dooku sees it. He also realizes something has changed. Sidious promised that the end of the war would elevate Dooku into a new order, but the duel has revealed what the Count never wanted to admit. Anakin was intended to replace him. If Anakin already suspects Palpatine, Dooku's loyalty suddenly has no rational foundation. He looks at the Chancellor and begins to speak. Sidious cannot allow it. The crisis aboard the Invisible Hand becomes radically different. A hidden mechanism in Palpatine's contingency plan triggers an explosion and security failure near the chamber, giving Grievous's forces an excuse to storm the area. In the chaos, Dooku is mortally wounded by fire that appears to come from a damaged battle droid emplacement. Anakin tries to save him long enough to get the truth. Dooku manages only a few words, confirming that his master is in the Republic before dying. It is not enough for a Senate trial, but it is enough for Anakin. Palpatine expresses outrage at the loss of a prisoner. Anakin says almost nothing for the rest of the escape. The relationship between them is effectively finished, even though neither has openly declared the truth. Back on Mandalore, Obi-Wan defeats Maul without killing him. He disarms him after a prolonged fight and places the blade at Maul's throat. This is the exact kind of moment that once defined Obi-Wan's Jedi discipline. Now the temptation is different. Killing Maul would be vengeance for Satine and Qui-Gon, punishment for months of manipulation, and a way to sever the chain that has bound Obi-Wan to the dark side. He cannot do it. Not because he has fully returned to the light, but because he finally recognizes that killing Maul in hatred would make Maul's victory complete. Obi-Wan lowers the weapon. Maul interprets mercy as weakness and attacks with the Force, escaping into the lower tunnels. Their partnership is broken, but not their strategic alignment. Both still want Sidious destroyed. Both still control pieces of the same Shadow Collective. They have become rival leaders inside their own faction. Cody's forces close in during the confusion. Obi-Wan is exhausted, wounded, and suddenly without Maul's protection, Cody finds him in a transit corridor with a squad of 212th troopers. The clones raise their weapons. Obi-Wan raises his lightsaber. Neither side attacks. Cody calls him General. The title does more damage than Maul ever managed with an insult. Obi-Wan tells him he is not his general anymore. Cody says that is obvious, but he still wants to know why. Not for the Republic, not for the Council. For the men who followed him, Obi-Wan has no answer that sounds adequate when spoken to one of those men directly. He tells Cody about the inhibitor chips. Cody stiffens. He has already undergone preliminary medical screening because of the Jedi investigation, but the full implications have not been explained to most clones. Obi-Wan tells him Dooku was involved in creating the army and that the Sith may have built a command into every clone. Cody asks whether Kenobi expects him to believe this after attacking Republic forces for months. Obi-Wan says no. He expects Cody to verify it himself. Cody orders his men to lower their weapons slightly. He tells Obi-Wan to surrender and return to the Council. Obi-Wan almost agrees. This is the second genuine path back he has been given. The first came with Bo-Katan after Satine's death. He rejected it because grief told him action mattered more than trust. Now the consequences of that rejection are standing in front of him wearing orange-marked armor. Before Obi-Wan can answer, every clone in the corridor receives an incoming encrypted priority transmission. On Coruscant, Mace Windu has moved against Palpatine. Anakin returned from the Invisible Hand and told the Council everything. Dooku's final words, Maul's accusation, the clone conspiracy, and the Chancellor's behavior together are enough for Mace to conclude they cannot wait. Unlike canon, Anakin does not discover Palpatine's identity through a private confession about saving Padme. He arrives at it through months of evidence created by Obi-Wan's fall. That means Sidious has lost the emotional setup he wanted. There is no promise of forbidden knowledge to save Padme because Padme's pregnancy has not yet become the decisive lever in this altered sequence, and Anakin already sees Palpatine as the probable architect of the war. Sidious understands that his opportunity to turn Anakin conventionally is collapsing. When Mace and the Jedi arrive, Palpatine does not waste time maintaining the disguise. The confrontation begins, but he has already initiated the next stage through secure channels. The message reaching Cody is Order 66. Cody's face changes before Obi-Wan's eyes. The transition is subtle because the helmet hides most of it, but the Force makes the difference unmistakable. A second earlier, Cody was asking his former general to surrender. Now the relationship is gone beneath an overriding certainty. The Order identifies the Jedi as traitors to the Republic, and whatever doubts Cody possessed are buried beneath the inhibitor chip's command. His blaster rises. Obi-Wan moves before the first bolt leaves the barrel. He throws himself sideways and deflects fire back through the corridor. 2 troopers fall. Another is hurled against a wall. Cody shouts for the squad to execute Kenobi, and Obi-Wan feels something inside him tear. These are not Mandalorian super commandos, droids, or syndicate assassins. These are men whose names he knows. Some served under him from the earliest years of the war. The dark side offers a simple answer. They have chosen to kill him, so kill them first. He does. For several seconds, the corridor becomes an execution ground. Obi-Wan's defensive style turns terrifying when he stops caring whether redirected bolts are lethal. He sends fire back into the clones who shot it. He uses the Force to crush rifles against armored chests and hurl troopers over railings. The 212th has fought beside him often enough to know his habits, but none of them has ever faced a version of Kenobi willing to use every opening to maim or kill. The very familiarity that once made them an extraordinary team now makes the encounter intimate and horrifying. Cody survives because he knows Obi-Wan too well to remain stationary. He orders crossfire, explosives, and overlapping angles designed to saturate Sorsu's defense. Obi-Wan recognizes his own battlefield lessons being used against him. He responds with techniques he never taught Cody, because a Jedi general was never supposed to need them against his own soldiers. He tears a support conduit from the ceiling and uses it as a moving barrier, closes distance through smoke, and disarms clones with the Force before they can coordinate. Then he reaches Cody. The commander draws a sidearm. Obi-Wan cuts it in half and raises his blade toward the gap beneath Cody's helmet. The dark side tells him to finish the threat. Every clone behind Cody is still trying to kill him. Every second of hesitation is dangerous. But Obi-Wan sees Cody on Christophsis, Geonosis, Ryloth, the Citadel, and countless battlefields between. He remembers giving him orders and trusting they would be carried out. He remembers Cody returning his lightsaber with the dry familiarity of someone who has done it too many times. Obi-Wan cannot strike. Cody uses the hesitation to drive a gauntleted fist into his injured side. Obi-Wan collapses backward. Cody reaches for another weapon, but a blue stun bolt hits him before he can fire. Rex is standing at the far end of the corridor with Ahsoka. The difference between the 2 clone commanders is the result of the Jedi's partial investigation. Rex volunteered for removal as soon as independent scans confirmed Fives had been telling the truth. His procedure was completed before the Mandalore campaign. Cody's had been scheduled after deployment because medical teams could not remove chips from millions of soldiers simultaneously without alerting the Chancellor's network. That delay has now turned 2 brothers, who both loved their Jedi commanders, into opposite sides of the same order. Rex stuns Cody again and tells Obi-Wan to move. Obi-Wan stares at the unconscious commander, and then at the bodies of the men he has just killed. Ahsoka sees his expression and knows what happened before she arrived. She does not tell him it was not his fault. The clones were controlled, but Obi-Wan made choices too. The distinction matters to the person he might still become. Around Mandalore, Order 66 tears the Republic Force apart. Clones whose chips remain active turn on any Jedi attached to the operation, and on Ahsoka as a former Jedi identified within the threat protocols. Troopers who underwent removal refuse. Others experience confusion because incomplete medical intervention weakened the chips without fully disabling them. Units that were coordinated minutes earlier begin firing on one another. Bo-Katan's warriors have no idea why the Republic has suddenly become a civil war inside their own siege. Maul understands faster than almost anyone. He feels the Jedi dying across the galaxy and recognizes Sidious's endgame. The moment he spent years fearing has arrived. He laughs at first, not because the deaths please him in any simple sense, but because the scale confirms everything he told Kenobi. Sidious has finally revealed the weapon hidden inside the Republic army. Then Maul realizes something even more important. The purge is not unfolding cleanly. Rex is still fighting beside Ahsoka. Some clone units are resisting their own brothers. Obi-Wan is alive. The Jedi on Mandalore had warning. Whatever happened on Coruscant forced Sidious to activate the plan, before every uncertainty was eliminated. Maul sees opportunity immediately. He broadcasts to every Shadow Collective unit that the Republic has turned on itself, and orders a full counterattack. Mandalorian super commandos sweep into positions abandoned during clone-on-clone fighting. Pike ships attack Republic supply vessels attempting to regroup. Black Sun Slicers flood military channels with false orders. Bo-Katan is forced into temporary local truces with people she was fighting an hour earlier, simply to evacuate civilians from crossfire. Mandalore does not fall to a clean Republic siege. It becomes the first battlefield of the new galactic fracture. Ahsoka wants to get Rex, Cody, and as many freed clones as possible off-world. Obi-Wan wants to reach Maul. She asks why. Sidious has just ordered the extermination of the Jedi, and Obi-Wan's first instinct is still to return to the man who broke him. Obi-Wan says Maul controls ships, routes, and intelligence they may need if Coruscant has fallen. Ahsoka says that is a strategic answer, not the real one. The real answer is that Obi-Wan does not know where else to go. The Jedi Order may be dying. The Republic has declared him a traitor long before Order 66. Satine is dead. Anakin is somewhere on Coruscant facing Sidious. Maul's empire is the only structure Obi-Wan has helped build during the months since his fall, and even though he now understands how deeply Maul manipulated him, leaving would require admitting that almost everything he did after Satine's death made the situation worse. Ahsoka tells him that admitting it would still be better than continuing it. Obi-Wan looks at the bodies of the 212th and does not answer. On Coruscant, Order 66 gives Sidious the opening he needs against Mace Windu's arrest team, but not the victory he achieved in canon. The confrontation in the Chancellor's office is already underway when clone shock troopers across the capital receive the command. Sidious kills Jedi with the same terrifying speed he demonstrates in the original timeline. But Mace is prepared for treachery, and Anakin is not arriving as a conflicted disciple, desperate for knowledge that might save Padme. He arrives knowing Palpatine is almost certainly the man Maul identified. That changes the decisive moment. When Mace gains the upper hand, Sidious still tries to manipulate Anakin. He claims the Jedi are attempting a coup. He reminds Anakin that the Council has lied, failed Ahsoka, and treated him with suspicion. Those wounds remain real, but the argument now has to compete with too much evidence. Fives died, warning them. Dooku was connected to the clone army. Maul named Palpatine. Obi-Wan risked everything to send the warning. The clones are turning on Jedi across the galaxy at the exact moment Palpatine is exposed as Sith. The pattern is no longer deniable. Sidious unleashes lightning at Mace. Anakin does not cut off Mace's hand. He blocks the attack. For one heartbeat, the entire future Darth Sidious wanted disappears. Palpatine sees Anakin Skywalker standing between him and the Jedi, not as a prospective apprentice, but as an enemy. The Chosen One has not become Darth Vader. Obi-Wan's fall, paradoxically, has helped prevent Anakin's. Sidious does not die in that office because he has prepared contingencies the Jedi do not know about. Clone shock troopers breach the surrounding levels under Order 66. Senate security systems lock down corridors. The office becomes a crossfire between Mace, Anakin, surviving Jedi, and troops who believe they are suppressing a treasonous insurrection. Sidious uses the chaos to escape through secure executive routes available only to the Chancellor. Mace wants to pursue. Anakin insists they have to reach the temple first. The decision saves lives. Without Darth Vader leading Operation Nightfall, the 501st and Coruscant Guard still assault the Jedi Temple, but they face a completely different battle. The clones possess numbers, heavy weapons, and surprise, yet they do not have one of the most powerful Jedi in history, cutting through defenders from inside the gates. Temple guards, instructors, knights, and older Padawans organize resistance. Emergency warnings spread through internal channels because the Council already suspected the clone conspiracy. The Temple still suffers terribly. Order 66 is designed to exploit the Jedi's trust in the soldiers around them, and many defenders die before they understand what is happening. Clones use gunships, armor, and coordinated military tactics against halls never designed as fortifications. Younglings are terrified and separated from teachers. But the Purge is not the near-complete massacre Sidious intended. Evacuation routes open. Groups escape through service passages and hangars. Anakin and Mace reach the temple while fighting is still underway, and carve a corridor through clone forces to get survivors out. Yoda, fighting elsewhere when the Order begins, survives as in canon. Plo Koon's fate depends on whether his chip-cleared pilots and commanders were reached in time. Some Jedi generals still die instantly because the investigation could not spread quickly enough. Others survive because commanders were screened, or because advance warnings make them suspicious before the first shot. The Jedi Order is devastated, but it is not annihilated. Palpatine responds politically before the surviving Jedi can respond militarily. He appears before the Senate through secure transmission and announces that the Jedi attempted to seize control of the Republic during the Separatist attack on Coruscant. He presents the violence in his office and the temple fighting as proof of rebellion. He does not need every senator to believe him. He needs enough fear, enough emergency authority, and enough clone formations still obeying orders to control the capital. The declaration of a new imperial government still becomes possible, but it is far less clean. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Padme, and other senators have more evidence that the official story is false, because Anakin and surviving Jedi can testify immediately. The Senate is divided, rather than uniformly swept along, by the claim that the Jedi attacked without provocation. Palpatine's supporters demand security. His opponents demand investigation. Clone troops surround government districts before that investigation can occur. Padme's role changes dramatically. Anakin reaches her alive and unfallen. There is no Darth Vader returning from the temple. There is no confession that he slaughtered Jedi or younglings. There is no journey to Mustafar in which Obi-Wan hides aboard her ship to confront him. The chain of events that kills Padme in the canonical endgame never happens in the same way. If Padme is pregnant by this point, Anakin knows he may lose the Republic, but has not lost himself. His fear for her is still enormous, yet Palpatine can no longer offer himself as the only path to saving her. The Chancellor is openly the enemy. Anakin's task becomes getting Padme away from Coruscant before Imperial forces can use her as leverage. Ahsoka's message from Mandalore reaches him during the evacuation. Obi-Wan is alive. Cody has been captured rather than killed. Rex's chip was removed and he is helping survivors. Maul controls much of the system again. Anakin wants to go immediately, but Mace forces him to confront the new reality. The Jedi cannot spend the opening hours of a galactic coup chasing one fallen master while thousands of survivors need coordination. It is almost exactly the lesson Obi-Wan once would have given him. Anakin stays. That choice marks how much the entire tragedy has changed him. He still loves Obi-Wan. He still intends to bring him back if possible. But he no longer allows fear of losing one person to determine the fate of everyone around him. The man Sidious wanted, as Vader is beginning to learn the lesson Vader never could. On Mandalore, Cody wakes restrained in a hidden medical facility controlled jointly by Rex and Bo-Katan's people. Ahsoka has arranged for the chip to be removed. When Cody regains full control, memories of attacking Obi-Wan return immediately. He asks how many of his men died. Rex does not lie. Cody then asks whether Kenobi killed them. Ahsoka says yes. The answer destroys any simple reunion between general and commander. Cody can understand that Obi-Wan defended himself, but he also knows Kenobi better than almost anyone, and can infer how he fought from the condition of the bodies. This was not the defensive restraint Cody remembers. Obi-Wan used lethal force quickly and deliberately. The dark side has changed him, even if he spared Cody at the end. Cody insists on speaking to him. Ahsoka says Obi-Wan has returned to Maul's territory. Cody closes his eyes. The general saved him from the chip by warning him, spared his life during the attack, and then walked back toward the person responsible for Satine's death. Nothing about the situation fits the categories clone training provides. Maul welcomes Obi-Wan back with contempt. He says Kenobi has finally seen what Sidious truly is and still wasted time trying to save clones. Obi-Wan tells him Anakin knows the truth. Sidious failed to turn him. Maul's expression darkens because this outcome should please him, but it also weakens Maul's leverage over Obi-Wan. The promise that only they understand the Sith conspiracy is gone. Anakin and surviving Jedi now understand it too. Obi-Wan tells Maul their alliance is over. Maul asks why he came back, then. Obi-Wan looks out across Sundari, where smoke rises from battles between clone forces, Mandalorian factions, and Syndicate units. He says because Mandalore is partly his responsibility now. Maul laughs at the Jedi instinct to carry every burden. Obi-Wan says this is not a Jedi burden. He helped turn the planet into a fortress and helped strengthen the Shadow Collective. If the Empire comes for Mandalore, he will not leave its people to pay for his choices. Maul accepts the answer because it still keeps Kenobi on the board. Their relationship changes again. They are no longer master and twisted apprentice, if they ever truly were. They are rival dark-side warlords sharing an enemy and a battlefield. Maul controls loyalty through the darksaber and fear. Obi-Wan controls portions of the military structure through competence and the officers who have learned to trust his planning. Neither can remove the other without risking civil war. Bo-Katan finds herself trapped between them. She hates Maul as the outsider who seized Mandalore and killed Satine. She is furious at Obi-Wan for helping him. Yet the new Imperial threat makes immediate destruction of their forces dangerous. Palpatine has declared the Jedi traitors and will eventually classify Mandalore's independent military government as another challenge to central authority. Bo does not join Maul, but she accepts temporary battlefield coordination against incoming clone and Imperial units where civilian survival requires it. That is the beginning of the fractured galaxy Sidious spent decades trying to avoid. The Separatists do not shut down cleanly. Count Dooku is dead, but General Grievous remains alive because Obi-Wan never goes to Utapau to kill him. The Separatist Council still controls industrial assets, and communications from Sidious become harder to coordinate while the Sith Lord is fighting for political survival on Coruscant. Some Separatist leaders continue the war because they believe the Republic's transformation into an empire proves everything they claimed about central tyranny. Droid armies remain active across the Outer Rim. The Imperial Corps forms around Palpatine, loyal clone formations, Coruscant's bureaucracy, and systems too frightened of chaos to resist. It is powerful, probably still the largest single political bloc in the galaxy, but it is born into open civil war rather than presented as the peaceful successor to a concluded conflict. Palpatine has no Darth Vader to hunt Jedi for him. He has no clean shutdown of every Separatist army. He has a surviving Jedi leadership publicly identifying him as Sith. The third major power is Maul's network centered on Mandalore. The Shadow Collective is bruised but more mature than its canonical version because Obi-Wan spent months converting it from a temporary alliance into a strategic system. The Pikes, Black Sun, Mandalorian loyalists, and criminal routes give Maul something neither Empire nor Separatists can easily crush with one decisive battle. It does not control the galaxy, but it can make entire regions ungovernable. And inside that faction stands Obi-Wan Kenobi, the most disturbing symbol in the war. To the surviving Jedi, he is proof that even one of their greatest masters can fall. To clones who remember serving him, he is both the general who warned them about the chips, and the dark warrior who killed their brothers when Order 66 turned them against him. To Mandalorians, he is the man Satine loved, who now helps defend a militarized version of the world she tried to prevent. To Maul, he is the masterpiece of revenge that refuses to remain owned by its creator. Sidious understands the irony better than anyone. He wanted Obi-Wan alive long enough to shape Anakin's emotions in predictable ways. Instead, Maul shattered Kenobi and created chaos around Skywalker that exposed the Sith plan prematurely. Palpatine's attempt to exploit the fall then failed because the same fallen master provided Anakin with the information necessary to recognize Sidious before the final temptation. This does not redeem Obi-Wan. He remains responsible for what he did after Satine's death. He helped preserve Maul's regime. He coordinated attacks that killed Republic soldiers. He empowered criminal organizations because he believed their resources were necessary to reach Sidious. When Order 66 came, he killed clones whose minds had been hijacked because rage made survival easier than restraint. A tragic motive does not erase those choices, but the dark side does not erase every part of Obi-Wan either. His refusal to kill Cody at the final moment matters. His decision to expose Palpatine matters. His refusal to execute Maul when he had him disarmed matters. They show that Maul succeeds in turning Obi-Wan toward darkness without ever managing to remake him completely in Maul's image. Kenobi becomes something less stable and perhaps more dangerous. A fallen Jedi who knows he has fallen and still cannot yet find the courage to return. Anakin refuses to give up on him. From whatever refuge the surviving Jedi establish, Skywalker makes it clear that Obi-Wan will not be treated merely as another Sith target. Mace disagrees. Some survivors believe Kenobi's knowledge makes him too dangerous to leave free. Ahsoka occupies the middle ground. She wants him saved. but she understands that saving someone cannot mean pretending they are not responsible for the harm they cause. That disagreement becomes part of the new Jedi struggle. The Order has survived, but survival does not restore the old certainty. Its masters have to ask whether the wartime compromises that helped drive Obi-Wan into despair were warning signs they ignored. They have to reconsider their relationship with the Republic now that the Republic itself has become an imperial regime. They have to decide whether redemption is still possible for a man who once embodied Jedi discipline and then broke under grief. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, has to live with the fact that Satine's death did not become easier after he embraced anger. Maul promised action instead of helplessness. Obi-Wan acted. He built armies, broke supply lines, hunted Sidious, fought Anakin, and killed soldiers. None of it brought Satine back. None of it made the memory of her final words less painful. The dark side gave him power over everything except the loss that made him reach for it. That realization is the seed of a possible return, but it is not the return itself. If this alternate timeline continued, the central conflict of Obi-Wan's life would no longer be whether he can defeat Maul in another duel. It would be whether he can accept that grief cannot be conquered through control, and whether he can face Anakin, Cody, Ahsoka, Bo-Katan, and the surviving Jedi without demanding that forgiveness come before accountability. Maul would fight that process every step of the way. Kenobi returning to the light would transform Maul's greatest revenge into another failure. Maul therefore keeps reminding him of Satine, of the Council, of the clones he killed, and of every reason he supposedly cannot go home. He needs Obi-Wan to believe darkness is permanent, because Maul himself has built his identity around the belief that there is no path back for people shaped by Sidious. That makes their alliance the darkest possible mirror of master and apprentice. Maul teaches Obi-Wan not through wisdom, but through wounds. Obi-Wan teaches Maul, unintentionally, that hatred cannot guarantee loyalty. Each tries to use the other to defeat Sidious, and each becomes evidence of the other's deepest failure. The galaxy pays the price. The Clone Wars do not end with a declaration that peace has returned. They mutate. Imperial fleets fight separatist holdouts while hunting Jedi survivors. Mandalore becomes a fortified center of anti-imperial resistance, controlled by factions that hate one another almost as much as they hate Palpatine. Criminal syndicates gain political power because conventional governments need their roots and information. Clone units fracture between those still controlled by chips, those freed from them, and those simply trying to understand why the Republic ordered them to murder commanders they trusted. There is no neat rise of the Empire. There is no Darth Vader marching at Palpatine's side. There is no Obi-Wan waiting in exile on Tatooine as the perfect symbol of Jedi endurance. Instead, Anakin remains one of the most powerful surviving Jedi and a central enemy of the new regime, while Obi-Wan becomes a dark side commander on the opposite edge of the conflict, defending Mandalore beside the very man who murdered Satine. Eventually, Anakin and Obi-Wan would have to meet again. That confrontation would be the emotional center of this alternate era. In the original story, Obi-Wan confronts a fallen Anakin on Mustafar and begs him to recognize what he has become. Here the roles are reversed. Anakin would be the one trying to convince his former master that pain does not justify tyranny, that betrayal does not make compassion foolish, and that loving someone who died does not require destroying the person who survived. Obi-Wan would recognize every argument because he taught Anakin versions of them for years. That may be the cruelest consequence of Maul's victory. By breaking Obi-Wan, Maul forces Kenobi to experience from the inside the struggle he spent Anakin's entire apprenticeship trying to understand from the outside. Fear of loss, anger at institutions, the intoxicating clarity of power, the belief that extraordinary circumstances justify extraordinary actions. Obi-Wan would finally know exactly how convincing those thoughts can feel. Whether he ultimately returned to the light would depend not on defeating Maul or Sidious, but on accepting responsibility without deciding that guilt makes redemption impossible. That is the choice Maul could never make for him. Maul could create the wound, encourage the hatred, and build the alliance, but he could not permanently control what Obi-Wan chose to become afterward. So if Maul had turned Obi-Wan to the dark side after Satine died, his revenge would have succeeded far beyond anything he accomplished in canon. He would have destroyed the Jedi Council's trust in one of its greatest masters, crippled the 212th's command structure, strengthened the Shadow Collective with Republic strategic knowledge, destabilized Anakin's emotional world, and transformed Mandalore into the center of a third galactic power. But the victory would also contain the mechanism of Sidious's failure. A fallen Obi-Wan would connect Maul's knowledge of the Sith to Anakin and the Jedi early enough to expose Palpatine, preventing the clean creation of Darth Vader and forcing Order 66 to begin before the Sith were ready for every consequence. Maul wanted Obi-Wan to feel what he felt, loss so complete that hatred became identity. In this timeline, he succeeds in making Kenobi fall, but he cannot make him simple. Obi-Wan's darkness would still carry the memory of the man Satine loved, the Master Anakin trusted, the General Cody followed, and the Jedi Ahsoka respected. Those pieces would fight inside him, even while the galaxy fractured outside. And that is what makes this version of the story so tragic. Satine's death would not merely take one life. It would become the moment that breaks one of the Jedi Order's strongest moral anchors, gives Maul the ally he always wanted to corrupt, and turns the end of the Clone Wars into a four-way struggle no one can completely control. Sidious still gains an empire, but not the empire he planned. Maul gains Obi-Wan, but never truly owns him. Anakin avoids becoming Vader, but loses the brother who might have guided him through the new war. And Obi-Wan survives, which in some ways is the harshest outcome of all, because he has to live long enough to understand that the vengeance he reached for after Satine's death did not free him from grief. It only gave that grief an army. Thanks for watching. If you have another Clone Wars what-if scenario or alternate storyline you want explored in depth, leave it in the comments below. Until the next video.